again, anyone who has just joined, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I will probably just wait and go through any questions at the end, but if you just want to pop them in and we'll work through them at the end, that's no problem. Okay, so applying for an Irish visa. There is a bit of a process, and it's a fairly straightforward process, but the important thing is having all your documents right, and DIFC will help you with this. So you're not on your own. Even if you were working with an agent, we will also support your agent in preparing the visa or checking the visa before it's submitted. So don't be afraid to ask questions for whoever you're liaising with in DIFC. We will help you each stage of the process. So what I'm going to cover through in this session is the steps in the visa process, who needs to apply for a visa before travelling to Ireland, what the visa requirements are, and the supporting documents you need to provide. Now, we do have full guidelines available, so if you are looking, if you want to access those guidelines, or if you want to ask any more questions, just pop us an email at info@difc.ie, and we can send you through the guidelines and help talk you through the visa application process. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so if we look at the steps in the visa process, there's two different processes. There's the process for countries where a visa is required to travel to Ireland, and there's a process for countries where a visa is not required to travel to Ireland. It's important to note that every student needs a visa, but just some students don't need a visa to do that initial trip to Ireland, and they'll get stamped for 90 days when they arrive, and they have time then to arrange their student visa. Other students do need a visa to travel, and still, even if when you get that visa, you're still only stamped for 90 days at the airport, and then you need to go through the process of registering your student visa once you're here. And again, DIFC help you with all that registration process. So for countries that are required to have a visa to travel, you need to complete the online visa application form on the immigration website. You need to then collate all your supporting documentation and then submit the full visa application and supporting documents to your local embassy or visa office or VFS office. Some nationalities will actually just be required to courier their visa application directly to the visa office in Dublin. But once you complete the online visa application form, it will tell you where you need to submit your documents. Once your visa is approved, then you travel to Ireland. And as I said, you will be stamped at the airport for 90 days when you first arrive. And then once you register with DIFC and you've started your classes, our student services will go through and get you the letter that you need, talk you through the process, and help you book your appointment with GNIB, it's called, the Garda National Immigration Bureau. And at that appointment, if you have already been granted a visa to travel to Ireland, you really just show your letter that you've registered with DIFC and a copy of your passport, and you'll be then issued and pay a €300 registration fee, and then you're issued with your student visa. For students who have travelled to Ireland without a visa and just got stamped for their 90 days, you will be required to show a bank statement in your name with €3,000 or equivalent in it. Now, you can do that in two ways. You can bring a bank statement from your account in your home country that shows the balance, or you can set up your Irish account, because you need to have an Irish account anyway, and we help you with that again. And you can just transfer the €3,000 into that account, print off your statement and bring that with you. And together with your registration letter from DIFC, you'll then get issued with your student visa and your GNIB card. So in terms of who needs a visa to travel to Ireland, generally most students do, but there are a few exceptions. So students from Hong Kong, Malaysia, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, South Africa, the United States, Australia, and EU passport holders are generally, as well as Brazil, generally don't need a visa to travel to Ireland. And it's all based on your passport. So what nationality is on your passport? If you are a student who say has lived in Nigeria your whole life, but you hold an Irish passport, again, you don't need a visa to travel to Ireland, so you can go straight through. But you just need to, it's best to just liaise with your DIFC representative and ask them about the visa process, and we can guide you as to whether you need a visa, and if you don't, what happens then afterwards. Okay, so the visa requirements. Again, we have a checklist that we work through, and we'll work through with you on this. But basically what you need is the signed online visa application form once you've completed it, your passport, and the passport must be valid for at least 12 months after your proposed date of arrival in Ireland. So that's very important. If your passport is due to expire before you are due to finish your foundation year, or before the September the following year, you need to renew your passport before you apply for your visa. You also need to provide 2 colour passport photos, and generally signed on the back. A cover letter or statement of purpose is the same thing. A letter of support from your sponsor or parents if they are sponsoring you. Evidence of finances, and we'll touch on each of these. Your proposed study plan, your education and employment history, your immigration history, and there are some additional requirements for students under 18 years, which I'll go through. So it's quite a rigorous process, but if you have all your documents in order, and the one tip I will reiterate again and again is, if you make it very clear and consistent across your application and make it easy for the visa office to find and validate the information that you're providing, then your visa will be approved. If you submit just a mass of documents that are all over the place and no structure to them, the visa officer is not going to take the time to sort through them because they have a huge pile of visas to go through. So you need to make it a very organised and structured visa application. So if we start with the cover letter or the statement of purpose, DIFC, again, will help you write this if you need. And what you want to talk about in this letter is, why are you looking to come to Ireland? What have you studied so far? What program have you been accepted into? And why have you chosen Ireland as your study destination? What is also very important is that you state it is your intention to return to your home country. So the student visa is not an avenue to get citizenship in Ireland, and that's very important to note. So you need to say that I'm coming to study, and get my international qualification, but I then want to return home to pursue my career because I have family commitments, I'm taking over my family business, whatever the reason is, but you need to explicitly state that in your application. Then you need to talk about who's funding your studies, how are you covering the cost, and just provide basic details of that in the cover letter. You also need to talk about any family members who, and it's immediate family members, who live in Ireland, the UK or EU, and just provide their name and date of birth. Any visa refusals you've had from any country. So we get a lot of students who think it's best, if they've had a visa refusal, not to declare it, and that is absolutely not the right course of action. The visa officers across different countries, they have access to the full database. So if you don't reveal that you've had a visa refusal before, they will find out, and then that's an automatic refusal of your visa. And it's very hard to appeal against a decision when you have, lied on your initial application. They won't accept it. So we have had many students who have had various visa refusals in the past who have still achieved a visa for Ireland, and as long as you can explain the reasons for the refusals and how that doesn't apply to this existing application, then it's fine, but you must declare it. And normally, if you can, provide the visa refusal letters in your supporting documents, and I'll touch on that. Again, any visa applications that you've made for other countries that are still open, you need to declare your medical insurance, which we have provided, so we provide you with the letter for that, and just a simple declaration that you will adhere to the conditions of your visa. They need that declaration just on the cover letter, just to confirm that you're not intending to breach your visa conditions in any way. What I also suggest, and although it's not a strict requirement, is that you then put in an index of your supporting documents, and we have templates for this, so we can help you with that. But it just then provides the visa office with a clear outline of what's included and how to find it. So we would also suggest that you have your cover letter, and then you have a simple, clear folder, plastic pocket with each section. So you might have a section that has your study plan. You might have a section that has your support letters and your finances. And then you'll have a section with your immigration history in it. And just have it all in different sections so that the visa office can easily find what they're looking for and what they want to review. So in terms of the letter of support from your sponsor, that needs to contain what the relationship is. So the most straightforward sponsor is your parent. And, in most instances, that's who's going to be sponsoring you. If it's an extended family member, like an uncle, even a sibling, they need to declare on that why they are supporting your studies abroad, and if they have other children. So they need to declare their other dependents as well if they're not your parent. You might have another private sponsor. Again, the same rule applies. They will need to declare why they're sponsoring you and what other dependents they have, in the form of names and dates of birth, so the visa office can see what financial commitments they'll have going forward. If they are sponsoring you and they have a 16-year-old daughter as well, are they going to look to sponsor her to study abroad, and are they going to be able to afford that? So that's why they would look for that. If your sponsor is a government, like a ministry or something like that, it's very straightforward. They issue the standard letter with the sponsorship, and that covers it off. So that's a very straightforward sponsorship relationship. In the letter, they also need to talk about what financial support they're giving you. They don't need to specify a specific amount, but they do need to say, I'm covering the tuition fees and living and travel expenses for my son or for the student. And again, provide a summary of the details of their sources of income. So what's their employment, or if they own a business, or if they have rental income. Again, I would then suggest a little index of documents. So this would just be in dot points. So please find enclosed my bank statements, business registration, whatever it is that you're supplying, and we'll go through that in the next slide. Just again, to provide the visa office with a quick snapshot of what's enclosed so they know what they're looking for and looking at. So in terms of finances from your sponsor, you need to have bank statements for at least the last 6 months, demonstrating that they have immediate access to at least 12,000 euro. Now, the government website will say 7,000 euro. However, we've found in practice that that's not sufficient. And really they're looking, because the cost of living in Dublin, you are not going to be able to survive with 7,000 euro for the year. So realistically, you need to have a year's worth of living expenses. Often a letter from the bank confirming the account details is also required, particularly from African countries. If your sponsor or parent their source of income is through employment, they need to provide a letter from the employer confirming that employment and copies of 3 recent pay slips. So the most recent 3 pay slips is the best. In a separate document, You need to go through the bank statement, and any lump sum deposits in particular, but also withdrawals that are listed. So anything that's not your salary, that's a sizable amount, and I would err on the side of caution and just list all deposits that aren't salary deposits, and go through and explain what those deposits and withdrawals were for. Now, we have a template for that, so if you're looking to do that, we can provide that for you. If we are helping you with the application, we will actually go through and do that ourselves, do up the template for you, and then you can just put in the explanations for those, and we check those for you. If your sponsor is a business owner, you need to provide copies of the most recent tax return. So hopefully that is just for the last financial year, and a certificate of registration, as well as bank statements as well. What's important with the bank statements that I forgot to touch on is if your sponsor has multiple bank accounts, it is in their interest to submit bank statements for each of those. If you have a savings account and you're just going to use that for the fees, that's fine. But if it doesn't show the regular ingoings and outgoings of the sponsor's bank account, the visa office is not going to accept that, because all they're going to see is lump sum deposits put in. So they need to show your regular current, account, your everyday account. And if you have a savings account as well, you need to show that as well. If you have like long-term investment accounts that you can also get immediate access to funds to, you can show those accounts and have a letter from the bank stating that you have immediate access to those funds as well. So it's all about showing the visa office that you can afford the tuition fees, you can afford the subsequent years of tuition fees. So you don't need to have the money there, but you can show that you have your income level is to the amount that you will be able to afford future tuition fees as well. And again, just on the rental income, details of the property owned, if you have properties, and confirmation from a real estate agent or some sort of evidence of a lease agreement showing what income is coming in from those. What they've also brought in, or they're getting more strict about this year, is the student's own personal finances. Now, obviously, if you're a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old and you're just graduating high school, generally they don't need it. But if you have had a study gap, or if you have worked at all, or if you're applying for a pre-master's program, you do need to provide 6 months worth of your own personal bank statements, even if you're not paying for your own tuition fees. They will just look at your personal finances as well. So you don't need to have any specific amount, but you just have to show your bank statement and show your own personal finances too. I just see a couple of questions, so I might just pop in and see. Okay, so we have a question here. Would it be possible for you to say that you would like to stay in Ireland for some time instead of saying you will go back to your home country? Okay, with that, if you're intending to study at an Irish university, you can say that I'm coming to Ireland to study my foundation year. My first choice university is University College Cork, and I would like to study there, and then hope to utilise the graduate work visa scheme in order to gain some international experience. But I would still say then I intend to return home. If your plans change, that is fine, but on the initial application, they want to see that your intention is to return back to your home country. So it's important that you do say that. Normally what we would put in the visa letters is that you are looking to study in Ireland for the foundation or pre-master's program, and you're hoping to gain admission to X university in Ireland or the UK. After that, you will then return to your home country, and that's where we leave it. Now, it's important too to kind of put the reasons why you're returning to your home country. So it might be, that you're just looking to start your career there. You're looking to, if it's a medicine student, often and you're looking to improve the standard of healthcare and that in your home country, or you might have family commitments and that you need to tend to at home, or all your family live back in your home country, so you want to be close to your family members. So there's a variety of different reasons, and we can help you. We can help you shape your personal statement to make sure you cover off all those visa requirements. The next, so again, the next question was, what if you intend to work after schooling? Will that be possible? Yes, it is possible, and the graduate work visa scheme is there, and that's no issue. But what we would encourage students, that's years down the track. This is the initial visa application to get you to allow to study visa. If you're automatically saying, oh, I want to stay in Ireland, that's setting off alarm bells for the visa office. So really it's important just to state you're here to study a foundation and do your qualification and go home. Yes, you can avail of the graduate work visa scheme, that's fine. And if that leads to sponsorship from a country that you're staying longer, again, that is fine. But I wouldn't be putting that on a visa application to start with, because it will signal alarm bells for the visa office. Okay, so we have another question. Why is it very difficult for people from Africa, specifically Nigeria, find it difficult to get visas to Ireland even when they meet all the requirements? What can DIFC do to limit that? And what we would suggest in this circumstance is that we help you with your visa. So liaise with DIFC to do your visa application with you. Traditionally, we've done pretty well with Nigerian students in terms of helping them get their visas. However, last year we did have a problem, and it was across the board in Ireland, in that the visa office in Abuja had staffing issues. So at a certain date, they stopped accepting visas or stopped processing visas in Abuja, and they sent all the visa officers to Dublin to be processed. What that led to is people who weren't informed about Nigerian financial system processing visas and looking at bank statements and going, oh, this doesn't look right, and automatically refusing visas. We did get a lot of those initial visas that were refused overturned in time for students to join in our January intake, and we did make up that ground. But that's what happened last year. I think a lot of the issues that students have had from Nigeria is from non-family members sponsoring them. So we need to be very clear about what the relationship is with the sponsor. If that sponsor has already provided financial assistance to the students previously, that's even better. So if we can show that they're sponsoring their foundation year, but they've also paid for some of their high school education, or they're covering their living costs or something like that as well for the family, that's fine. Again, it's shown a history of commitment to paying for the student's education. So it's really down to an individual basis. For all African students, not even just from Nigeria, but for all African students, I would strongly encourage that you connect with your DIFC representative in DIFC head office, and we will help write your visa application and cross-check all the supporting documents with you before you submit your visa application. That's my main advice for this year. We have another question here, and then I'll move on to the next thing, is I would like to know whether there are any advantages in the visa application process if your immediate family member, i.e. brother, is living in Dublin. Not really. The only advantage that would provide in that situation is that if you're intending to live with your brother, then that obviously reduces the financial requirement, because you won't have any accommodation costs. So you still need to show the €12,000. However, they won't be as strict in terms of making sure that you can cover your living expenses, because your living expenses will be reduced significantly by the fact that your brother is living in Dublin. So you do have to declare that he's living in Dublin, If you're living with him, all the better. So that, you know, again, reduces the burden of financial evidence. But, you know, you still need to have that 12,000 immediate access to show. I hope that helps you there. The next person, one more question, and then I will move on and I'll answer the rest at the end, is does a student graduating from DIFC Foundation and Pre-Masters have access to post-work visas? And can they work during studies at DIFC? So that's two questions. The first part is, can they work during their studies at DIFC? And the answer to that is no, they are not allowed to work. This is because of the visa rules around foundation programs or private foundation programs in Ireland. However, and once they complete the foundation and pre-masters program, they don't have access to the post-work study visa at that point. It needs to be a bachelor degree or a master's degree or PhD in order to access the post-study work visa. It's for graduates, not for, you know, foundation program students. So yeah, the answer to both of those questions is no. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the next section, and that is the study plan and education history. So the next section you need to have is basically your study plan. And the documents you need for that is your final acceptance letter from DIFC, which we will provide you. And in that outlines your study plan, confirms what fees have been paid, and outlines that medical insurance is covered by DIFC and the details of that. You also need to provide the original of your IELTS or your English language certificate in that. And it's important to note that this year the visa office will accept your Duolingo English test, so you can print the certificate for that and put that in your study plan as well. In terms of education and employment history, you need to provide the original documents of your high school certificate and results transcripts, and if you're a pre-master's student, your diploma and degree qualifications certificate and transcripts. If those certificates and transcripts are in another language other than English, you need to provide official translations of those as well. And that's important for any documents that you're providing in your supporting documents. If your bank statements are in a different language, if your letters of employment are in a different language, if your rental agreements are in a different language, you need to provide official translations of all of those. And what I mean by official translation is go to an official translator, they will translate it and stamp it as an official translation, okay? If you are a pre-master student, or if you have graduated high school more than 12 months ago, you need to provide a detailed CV outlining what you have been doing since you graduated. So detailing work experience, explaining any gaps between work experience. You must have start and finish dates for all your education and your employments listed. And for each item, so each education experience and each employment experience, you need to have evidence. So for education, you'll obviously have your certificates of completion and your transcripts. And for your employment, you need to have a letter from the employer confirming the period of employment and the responsibilities you had. So that's very straightforward, but important to collate. Okay, now we're into the last supporting documents. So the immigration history I did touch on earlier. So that's just a summary of all your visa applications you've submitted and the purpose of each. We have a template for this. So it's great just to pop in the visas, the date ranges and what they were for. If you've had any visa refusals, you should attach your visa refusal letters here. If you don't have a visa refusal letter, or it was from 10 years ago or whatever, it was for a primary school trip or whatever, that may be okay, but you need to talk to DIFC about that, and we can try and put in just an explanation around that for you. Now, the last requirement is for students who have who are under the age of 18. So in this situation, you need to provide a birth certificate, you need to provide a copy of the passport for each of your parents, and you need to provide a signed parental consent form. And we enclose that in your offer letter if you're under 18. So you just need to include that in your visa application, the original of it. So generally what you need to do is you actually need to fill out that parental consent form twice, because you need to bring an original with you to Ireland, and you need to include an original in your visa application. So you need to have 2 copies of that form. And then a copy of your passport for your parents. Okay. So I'm just going to reiterate a couple of top tips. You know, the visa application process can be very straightforward, but if it's really down to each individual student. So your study history may be very basic, you know, you've finished high school, you're going on to foundation, or it may be a bit more complicated that you've had some time away from your studies, or you know, you have a non-relative sponsoring you. So in those situations, we really need to work quite closely with you on preparing your visa application. But these 4 rules remain the same regardless of your situation. So the first thing is consistency. So everything you say in your visa application needs to be consistent across all the supporting documents. What I mean by that is if in your cover letter you say that you graduated from high school in July 2019, your transcript needs to say that you graduated in July 2019. If you say that you had work experience, on your CV, you worked for, Starbucks from August to October in 2018, the letter from Starbucks needs to state that you worked from August to October in 2018. So you need to just do those cross checks that everything is consistent. Another thing is name. So the name on your passport needs to be consistent with the name on all your documents. If there's an issue with a different name, and this happens more than you think, that the name on a student's graduating certificate is wrong and just hasn't been corrected, the visa office will pick that up. So you need to cross-check and make sure that the name on your graduating certificates is the same as the name on your passport. If it's missing middle names, and that's fine, but you know, you can't have a different last name to what's on your passport without it being explained. As I mentioned at the start, clearly presented. So have your cover letter, and then use plastic pockets to put each section's supporting documents in, and clearly label those plastic pockets, so that if you have your index where you say section 1 is this, section 2 is that, have a plastic pocket, section 1 and what the section is called, section 2 and sponsor documents, section 3 financial documents, and just make it as easy as possible for the visa office to find the information that you've listed. Finances, obviously the more the better, and the onus is on you to show that you and your sponsor can support yourself during foundation without working, and also that you have the means to support tuition fees after you study foundation, so that you have the income or the savings that you will be able to afford to pay your tuition fees going forward. And the last thing, as we touched on, was the intention to return home. Now, I know a lot of you would be thinking of utilising the graduate work visa scheme, and that is fine, but for the purposes of your initial visa, I would state that you're looking to gain your qualification and then you're looking to return home for whatever reason. It just makes it less complicated from a visa's perspective. And then, obviously you'll gain work experience and that during your degree, and you can then avail of your graduate work visa scheme and you apply for that, and that's no problem. It's just if you're starting from the start of saying that you want to stay in Ireland, it will raise alarm bells. So you need to be very clear about your intention to return home. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go through, I think there's a few more questions coming through. Why isn't that pulling up for me? Hold on, oh, here we go. I'm just going to stop sharing. Okay, so we'll go through the last few questions. And if anyone else has any questions, I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes just to go through these. Okay, so what if a student has had several jobs and can't get a letter from all previous employers because they are in different locations? That will be an issue, if I'm completely honest. So really, you need to have some sort of evidence. So whether it's old pay slips, whether it's, you know, really it's either a letter or pay slips for the period. If they can't explain what they were doing for a certain period and show evidence of that, the visa office is likely to refuse. Now, you know, if it's a small period, they may get through, but that would be a risk if we're completely honest. So really the onus is on the student, even if before they've confirmed their place with DIFC, if they are thinking of coming to Ireland and studying here, really I would be trying my darndest to contact the previous employers and get a letter from them. Next question is, what if I'm 17 years of age at the time of visa process but will return 18 before arriving in Ireland? Yep, so if you're going to be 18 when you travel, that is fine. You don't need to have the additional requirements. It's really for when you travel, what age you're going to be. So if you're 17 years now, but you're going to be 18 when you travel to Ireland, you don't need to provide those additional requirements. All I would do in that situation is state explicitly in your cover letter that you are travelling after your 18th birthday, just so it makes it more obvious for the visa office. What if they have employment letter for each employment? Will that suffice? Yes. So if they have an employment letter that has a contract, you know, that says, you know, this person has been employed from January 2015 to, you know, December 2015 in this role, that's fine. So it doesn't have to be a recently dated letter. It can be a letter from that period confirming the period of employment. That is absolutely fine. Any other questions? I'll give you a few minutes. Yeah, so your local, if you have applied through one of DIFC's agents, they will help you with your visa application. They can also contact DIFC and utilise our visa support services as well. So if you have, I would suggest if you have a long study gap, that you suggest to your agent that you know, they work closely with DIFC to support your visa application, or if you want to yourself, once your visa application is prepared, just send it in to your DIFC representative in head office, and we can do a quick check on it before you submit, just to make sure that, you know, your agent has covered everything off for you. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so we have a question here that's, you know, the employment letter you were referring to was an employment letter at the start of the employment. Okay, so that, in the absence of having anything else, I would submit that. If they had any sorts of pay slips as well, then that would help. But an employment letter to state that they were awarded the position will definitely help. And if they have then the next employer's letter that states the start date as well, then, you know, the inference is that they were employed for most of that period in between. So again, it wouldn't be ideal, but it's better than nothing, and at least it confirms that the employment at least started. And again, if they had pay slips or anything, even just a couple from the period of employment, that again provides more evidence that they were employed during that period. So again, yes, an employment letter from the start of the employment would be okay, but it wouldn't be the best option. But if that's all they had, then we'd go with that and would see how we get on. Okay, so if a prospective student who has an agent is contacting DIFC directly, how is the process managed? So in the situation of so the student has made the application through an agent, we would, if they then contacted DIFC directly for visa support, we would just help them with the visa support. We would obviously let the agent know that we're helping them with their visa, because the agent would probably be involved in helping us to follow up any supporting documents. But, you know, there's no issue in terms of, you know, commission or anything like that for the agent. You know, it's just a service that we provide. So our aim is to help the student successfully get a visa, regardless of whether they've applied directly to DIFC or whether they've applied through an agent. It makes no difference. So it's really just getting the student's visa. So for some agents, we would work with the agent directly on helping to prepare the visa. For other students, they might just contact us directly, and in which case we would let the agent know and get the agent involved in that process, but probably we would write the visa application for the student. Okay, so the next question is, if you have a long period of time during which I didn't take any new application or many jobs, how much does that affect the visa application process? Okay, so really it would depend on the reason why there was such a long period. Unexplained gaps in your education and work history, again, are a concern to the visa office. If there was extenuating circumstances such as illness or family issues or anything like that, we just look for some sort of evidence around that. So if you were personally sick during that time, you know, we could get some sort of medical certificate. If you were caring for a family member who was sick, again, we just get some sort of medical certificate to confirm that. You know, there are a whole range of reasons why you might have a gap in your study history or work history. It's just about providing the evidence as to why that gap was and removing any concern from the visa office as to what your personal history is. So again, in that situation, I would speak to your DIFC representative, whether that's an agent or whether that's someone in head office, myself, and talk to them about your personal circumstances, and then we can advise what you need to show in terms of your visa application. Okay. Oh, another question. So, in a situation where a visa application is refused, what support would DIFC give for appeals? Okay, so we would actually help you, regardless of whether you're a direct student or whether you've applied through an agent. We would take ownership of the appeal. The first thing we would look at is the reasons for your refusals. So it may be a situation where there's no way an appeal is going to be overturned because of the basis of the refusal. And say, for example, one situation might be that you've lied on your application and you haven't declared a visa refusal. So if you've lied on your initial application, there's no chance an appeal will be approved, unless you can show evidence that you didn't lie. But if it's in the case that you didn't declare something, then that is essentially a lie. So in that situation, we would just advise, you know what, there's no point in appealing. It's actually just going to extend it for you, and we'll refund your fees less the administration charge. in the situation where your visa is refused and it's might be for more evidence, more supporting documents might have been required, we would then work with you to get those supporting documents. We'd check them. We would then write your refusal letter and with you and check that with you, and then you would submit the appeal. So we would help you through all of that quite closely, and we try and get those appeals done and turned around, you know, in a couple of weeks, so that it's not delaying your travel plans. Okay, so if the reason for the study gap is raising a family, what evidence do you need to provide? In that situation, I would just provide birth certificates of the children and say that I was raising my family and here are the children. Here is evidence of their births, and that's fine. That would be very straightforward. I wouldn't be too concerned about a study gap for raising a family in that. In the event that a visa is refused, our policy is that you must submit an appeal. And if that is refused, then we will issue a refund less an admin charge of €500. Where it gets a little bit tricky with this year is for students who are starting online. So that's why the visa offices are reopening next week, and we are encouraging students to get their visa in straight away, because for online students starting in September, there will be an additional charge deducted. So for each month that you are studying the program, there will be €1,500 also deducted from your deposit if your visa is then refused. So you'd have, if your visa is refused, you'd have two options. You could continue and appeal, or you can stop and you can stop your studies and defer to our January intake and then continue with your visa application and your appeal. And that stops you from getting deducted each month if your visa is then refused. So that would be my suggestion in that situation. But in the simplest form, if your visa is refused, we refund the fees, but just less a €500 admin charge. It's just when students have already started the online program that additional charges apply, but we would advise you on that. And that is in your offer letters. And it also, any student who had an offer letter issued before about a month ago, you would have got an email on that as well. What was I going to say there? My advice to students starting in September is the visa offices are opening from this Monday. So really confirm your place as soon as possible and get your visa application in as soon as possible, so you're not left in limbo, and your visa application will be processed. Okay. Another question is, do we also need to provide our social media accounts and emails? No, you don't. You don't need to provide your social media accounts as part of your visa application. That's irrelevant. So I wouldn't include any information about that. Okay, I'll give you one more minute to ask any more questions, and then we might finish up. I think. Okay. We have silence. Okay. Okay, some students have their husband as their sponsor. Again, perfectly fine as long as they have the finances to do that. That's a husband as a sponsor would be a similar relationship as a parent sponsor. They're a dependent, so that's not a problem. They're allowed to have their husbands as their financial sponsor. That's not a problem. Okay, we might wrap it up there.
Narity,
oh yeah.
I would just like to say a huge thank you to you on behalf of everybody at DIFC for all of your work putting this morning together. The engagement across all of the classrooms has been fantastic, with some really, really good questions. And, you know, just to say to people, all the sessions have been recorded. So if somebody wants a specific session, we can send it to them next week.
Yes,